From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, December the 10th, the year 2014. And now, here they are, Jim and Rich.
Off and running, another edition of the Armchair Experts. Jim Leon. Rich Massaro has returned after being on special assignment for our Thanksgiving show.
Jim,
my partner was better looking that day than you.
Yeah, that's true.
You know.
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to get out of me today, Jim. I'm in a different kind of mood today, so we'll see what happens here. We'll see what happens.
John Q, get the phone number ready. You got it. You got it up. Got it handy.
John said he had to go to the priest yesterday for other reasons, but that he may be back for another trip today.
Oh gosh, have him on speed dial. I may have to get your number and have it on mine. I'm not even Catholic, so I don't know what we're going to do here again.
Jim, you listen to John give the introduction, and it's sort of, because he does the same introduction for every show.
Makes it sound good, doesn't it?
Today, I'm listening, and the first part of the introduction is from the John DeVita Broadcast Center. Wow. And I have to say, as many times as we've been down here and do the show, it always amazes me what John has done down here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is really a cool place.
It is.
And he's got his holiday decorations up here.
I was going to say John does some great Christmas stuff. And did you notice these little items behind us here, Jim? That's really cool stuff.
Oh, I remember those on the trees when I was a kid.
Yeah,
the bubble lights and walking down the gangway there like on Candy Cane Lane.
When I walk into this basement, I feel like I've walked back in time, and I'm saying that in a complimentary way because I like the feel of Christmas, but I like the feel of old-time Christmas especially. So
yeah, so it's cool.
Yeah, everything is
cool.
really, really nice.
I had to laugh. I got a calendar. Dana gave me a calendar last year, and I have it up in the kitchen. It's one of these calendars with each month has kind of a snarky comment, and this month is wishing you a happy whatever doesn't offend you.
There you go. Yeah, I like that.
So
yeah.
I like that.
That is I like that a lot.
Wishing you a happy whatever doesn't offend you. So.
And I'm just going to wish you a Merry Christmas, whether it offends you or not.
That's right.
Why the heck? Jim? Let me dwell on this for a second. Why does anybody ever, if we were both, if we were Muslims, and somebody said happy, I'm trying to think, happy Ramadan.
Ramadan.
Would that, and I was, or say that, would that necessarily have to offend John? I mean, when it was Ramadan, it's Ramadan, okay?
Right.
I mean...
that's right.
And if a Muslim says Happy Ramadan, why would that offend me just because I'm a Christian?
That's right.
I don't understand this. Well, you know what? Somebody's making money out of the deal. That's the only thing I could say.
Somebody always makes money.
Being offended, being a victim society is making money
I know. It's a cottage industry.
It is.
And
it is a cottage
and you
industry.
have guys going, trying to exploit it whatever way they can.
Definitely.
Gee, I really want to talk about the Bears, but I'm not sure.
Go ahead, talk about the Bears.
I'm not sure.
Well, come on, Jim.
We got into a discussion yesterday.
We always get into discussions.
As we were having what we laughingly referred to as show prep yesterday afternoon over at Fannie and Schmoes with a cup of coffee and a scone that I was enjoying, and we were talking to Rita and planning our next trivia contest.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. But we were talking about the issues with the Bears and who's going to take the fall this year, really, for this season. I really, first of all, I believe Emery's going to get one more shot.
Oh yeah,
to get it right. And if he did, although I would not be terribly surprised if the McCaskies do bring somebody in over him in the football side,
okay.
And let Sweaty Teddy just make them money, continue to make them money.
Okay.
I think Trestman's going to be back.
Oh yeah, I think so.
I think he'll get one more shot.
Sure.
Because I don't think they're going to want to pay for 2 years.
No. Well, Jim, as you're speaking, I just jotted a couple things so I don't forget what I'm thinking about. I was going to say, interesting the way we have such a moment-by-moment society, and the media reflects that. That I'm thinking, you made the comment, something to the effect that, Emery's going to get one more year to get it right, I think is what you said.
Or at least one more chance.
One more chance. Yeah, right, that's what you said. And I jotted down, I mean, there's no, he may be in the process of getting it right now, even though the results.
Exactly. The results may not show it.
The results are not there right now.
Right.
The other thing is, I know one of the people we talked about as, I would think it's a given that Tucker is going to take a fall, and I was going to say
he'll be the fall guy. One
of the admirable things about the people
and the special teams coach Deacon Millis.
One of the admirable things about the people in the professional sports business, especially the coaches and the executives, is that Mel Tucker and Joe DeCamillis will, I would say, without question, will give it their all the last 3 weeks, even knowing, I would say Mel Tucker probably realizes that he's going to be the one of the fall guys. Mm-hmm. And he will still do a professional job, prepare his team the best way he can.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's a very admirable thing, and I think that is the norm, by far the norm in that business.
Yeah. It was interesting, too, because I was listening to the Score last night. Mm-hmm. And John Bostic is on Monday afternoons. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I didn't particularly care. They have this young guy on, young fella. Mm-hmm. What is he, second year?
Yeah.
On as a guest, and they kind of, I wonder if they realize that before he comes on and after he comes on, they are kind of ridiculing him because they're not seemingly getting any answers out of him.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's two things that I've heard, one about Tucker and one about DeCamillis. People on the defense, people on the special teams both say they are very well prepared when they go out there. Mm-hmm. They've got their game plans down. They know what they're supposed to do. Why it's not happening, nobody, we have to play better. Well, I don't know where the disconnect is. But at least, as you say, both coaches are going to go out and they're going to prepare their players professionally to do the job out there.
Definitely.
The concern I would have if Tucker takes the fall, which he probably will, is that who's going to come here when you are in a situation where conceivably the head coach could be whacked after next year if they don't produce. Who's going to come here for the potential to be 1 year? Unless it's an up-and-coming guy who thinks he has the potential then maybe to be considered as the head coach and be promoted.
Yeah, that's something. I know you brought that up, and it's not, put it this way, you may be 100% right that it might be a difficult spot to fill. It's something that doesn't really get on my radar. It doesn't perk me up at all. I don't. That's stuff that I don't worry about. There's so many competent people in the profession that I'm sure they'll get somebody to fill the job.
Somebody will come in and fill the job.
The interesting thing, as you're talking about the team in general, and what's I don't know how you put it, but what's wrong with the team? Why are they prepared yet they're not performing? And I'm thinking. There was an article in this week's paper, or I guess it would have been last week's paper, about Urlacher had made some comments about Cutler, and then somebody had written an article about, one of the columnists wrote an article about, the Bears having to respect these guys like Urlacher who've given good service and Briggs leaving. And I'm thinking, well, you know what? It's a sort of darned if you do. Hey, I was good there, right? I didn't say those words.
John appreciated that.
You're darned if you.
He said, "Darned if you do."
You're darned if you do, and darned if you don't.
John just blessed you for that, by the way.
Thanks, John. Because I think that one of the problems that the way I'm sort of seeing it is that this administration has tried to respect the veteran players by keeping them on, and maybe they've kept some of them on too long to the point where they're not really effective players anymore.
I think so.
So they, and I think if the mistakes that are being made, I think maybe you have a bad blend of veteran players who are almost out, and maybe they're not the ideal players to. And I could be totally wrong about this. Maybe they're not the ideal players to pass on the tradition to these younger guys. So maybe just the blend. Not that any of them were terrible players, but the blend at this moment isn't good.
No,
and maybe that's your problem.
Yeah, I think the issue too. I mean, just from a football standpoint, is last year, for the sake of continuity and whatever, just like you said, respect for the tradition, respect for the players, they went 1 year too long with an aging defense.
Yeah, that's right.
And between that and really paying for 10 years of lousy drafts by Jerry Angelo, for the most part lousy drafts, it's put the team in the situation where they are now.
Well, in the off season, when they and as a fan sitting here, I'm okay with this. But if I had to run the team, I'd be thinking, would I be doing the same thing? When they signed Charles Tillman again, I was surprised.
I was surprised too, but you know what? It wasn't a big contract.
No. But I mean, again, even though it wasn't a big contract, was he still an effective player? The other guy, and I thought he might be in a situation where he had peaked and maybe was ready to go downhill, and he's been a good player for us in the time he's been here, is Tim Jennings. When they signed him, and I think they signed him to better than a 1 year deal, I was like, boy, so. that surprised me. Actually, it may tell you that there was nobody really. They couldn't fix the problem with free agency and the draft, so they stuck with some veterans who are getting on in years at those positions. And I'm not saying that those guys are the problem, but I'm saying if that's the decision-making process, if that's because of what you alluded to before, the aging defense that they stuck with a year too long. But then they were there. Then it got worse for them, where they had to keep guys on who maybe they normally wouldn't keep on.
Yeah,
that could be a big part of your problem.
Well, I mean, the objective in the 2013 season was to fix the offensive line. That was really the first objective, and did reasonably well fixing the offensive line.
Yeah.
The objective in the second year was to strengthen the defense. Okay, you made some moves. It didn't work. Mm-hmm. Let's face it. It just didn't work.
Here, I would say it partially worked.
Well, partially. You're right.
I think the defensive line has been better. I know people will like to bring up Jared Allen's name and say they paid him all that money and look at the production. But I will have to say this. You know what amazes me sometimes? That the elephant is in the room and people don't see it. How could it be taken so lightly? And I don't care if you're an athlete in tip-top shape or you're an older person. Jared Allen had pneumonia.
Right.
How he was back on the field by my calculations, and I might be wrong by a week, but he was back on the field in about playing a game in a week after he had pneumonia. 2 weeks, maybe.
2 weeks.
Now I don't care
and
who
he
you
lost.
are.
He lost 15 pounds.
How fast do you recover from the effects of pneumonia?
You don't. I mean, I can tell you right now, personally, Dana's getting over it right now, and she's like, I need a nap.
Yeah. So I think they accomplished what they wanted to do there. I think they strengthened at least one area. I think to me, there's a couple other things in the defense. The linebackers obviously aren't doing it. I think DJ Williams. Nobody has really said much about DJ Williams.
No.
I think he played well when he was healthy last year. I don't think he's done much this year. Mm-hmm. And Lance Briggs, obviously, I think
his career is over.
His career is over. So that's an unstable situation. And I think with the defensive backfield, again, they signed Tillman and Jennings. They drafted Fuller. They were hoping that was going to work for another year. the other thing with the safeties, they signed a handful of guys who were journeymen. Brock Vereen could turn out to be good. He's the draft choice. One of the big problems, I think, as much as people criticize him, I'm not criticizing it, but Chris Conte might be their best player there, and the man can't stay healthy.
He can't stay healthy, and I thought it really, when it was announced that he was injured and wouldn't be back, when the crowd cheered, I thought that was
that's
Bush
stuff.
That was just Bush.
But that's the type of I have to say this. You love them when they're with you, and you criticize them when they're not. But that's the mentality of a lot of fans. I personally, I don't know if I've ever booed anybody.
It's the meatball.
Yeah, it's the meatball fringe.
It's the meatball fringe. Have I ever booed? Yeah, I booed at games.
Have you? I know.
Sure.
I don't think I ever.
Sure.
I
mean,
Jim,
if you see an effort that you can look out there and see an effort that somebody's given up, or not playing to the capabilities. I think you're entitled of it. If you're just being a jerk because you don't like somebody,
yeah,
Well,
you know what?
I once booed at a DePaul game, and the guy who sat behind me for a number of years hit me over the head with a program and said, "I'm disappointed in you."
Yeah, I'm a fan. I appreciate what's going on out there for the most part. Obviously, not everything that you see is going to make you happy, but in the long run, in the big picture, it's not all that important. I mean, as much, and we love it. We love it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it, talking about it.
We wouldn't be doing it. And remember what I've said. Remember what I've said during basketball games and football games and other things. I said there's 1 billion people in China who don't give a rat's.
They really don't. I'm telling you. There's, what's amazing with that house that we have had down there just south of Springfield, in between Springfield and St. Louis. You get a St. Louis radio station or a Decatur radio station or whatever, but it's amazing. Other than texting back and forth with you for, say, 2 or 3 days down there, it's like you're
in
who's
a
the
different
Cubs,
world.
Who's the Bears, who's the Hawks,
Right.
who's the Bulls.
Right.
Nobody cares there. I mean, you're not that far from Chicago.
Right.
Much less like your Hey, forget about China. Just south of the city here, a couple 100 miles, nobody cares.
Yeah,
so,
you're down there. It's I don't know, what are the Blues doing?
Yeah, that's,
is Bacchus all right?
Yeah.
That's the big. That's the big question. But I mean, if you get down there before everybody moves back, listen to the man. I think it's out of St. Louis.
KMOX or something?
No, it's not KMOX. I think it's on a lower. I think it's down around 560, 580, something like that. You talk about meatball sports.
Really? Okay.
Oh my God!
But Jim, I mean, you've told me a couple times. What's the segment on Burns and Bors and Bernstein that you like? I think is it when Hub Arkush comes on.
When Hub Arkush comes on and talks football.
You said a couple of times.
Very
there's
good.
A couple of shows that you like. They talk good, solid, common sense football.
I mean, when they have Hub is on with them twice a week. He's on Tuesday, and it's just a half hour with the three of them. On Wednesday, Hub takes calls.
Okay.
And for the most part, I'd say 99% of the calls are good.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You get some goofs occasionally. You get in there, probably tell the screener one thing, and then get in there and say something else.
Okay.
And Brian Billick is on with them for a few minutes.
Oh, he knows his
each
stuff. Yeah.
each week. Jerry DiNardo comes on and talks college football.
Okay.
Matt Bowen, there's a guy who's got a great football mind. When you get into this time of year, you got some good discussion with these guests.
Okay.
I did laugh though, just mentioning Hub. He was doing the evening show. He was doing this after Bors and Bernstein, and he took a call from somebody, and they said something, and and Hub went, we've had a lot of good discussion, a lot of good phone callers tonight. You're not one of them.
Wow. Okay.
And he went,
That's good.
oh my God, I'm talking like Bernstein.
What I could never get out of my mind when Hub Arkush's name comes up is that when he did work on the Bears broadcast.
Oh, he was a house man.
He was I was going to use the word shill, but
He was
house
a
man
shill.
is right.
He was a shill.
I mean, when I would sit here and listen to a game, and he would be espousing the virtues of Rashaan Salam, and I'd be ready to, where's the vomit bucket?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, come on, and you know what? I mean, you knew that Hub knew better than that, and he, and that just, so I understand that Hub knows the game. I think he knows it well.
Oh yeah.
But I have an aversion to him. I mean, when his name comes up, I sort of recoil a little bit. Not as much as I used to, but I still do.
Listen, if you're out 5 o'clock on Tuesday and 5 o'clock on Wednesday.
Okay.
Good discussion.
Okay.
Really, I think for the most part, good discussion. And I mean, Hub is very honest now.
Yeah, that's good. Now
Hub is very honest. I mean, we've a lot of people have posted on the boards. I mean, when he was still doing the Bears games, when he was starting doing the crew, and they started having these radio shows, the coaches shows and it would cross over between BBM and the Score, and he'd have to do a show on the Score. Mm-hmm. I mean, he would if anybody criticized whoever was on. He'd jump on them right away. He insisted that I won't take anybody who can't give me the right name.
Okay.
I won't talk to anybody on the air who can't give me the right name. So,
Okay.
Dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Couldn't call in.
I was going to ask you, is your phone up on the table?
Yeah.
Because I didn't see it light up or anything. Because when you mentioned if you're listening at 5 o'clock, tune into the Score.
You thought I'd get it?
Because I thought if Kevin was listening, you'd get a text and say, "Hey, what about Jack FM? We're playing."
We're playing the hits. Well, all right, 5 to 5:30, and then go back and listen to Jack FM.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Then go back and listen to Jack FM. Because let's see, are we Jack Frost FM, or does that come later in the evening?
No, we're Jack. How does that work, Jan?
Jack FM just comes about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Jack Frost is 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, then go back and listen to Jack Frost.
So in other words, we're not playing Christmas music all the way around the clock, Jan?
No, from 7 in the morning to about 3 in the afternoon, we're regular music. After 3 o'clock, we become Jack FM.
We go to Jack Frost FM, but the other station, the Harwood Heights station, that's 24 hours.
See, I thought even our show, which I wouldn't mind, would be preempted and played at a later date because we're going to go 24/7 with Christmas music, or holiday music. Excuse me.
We got into a discussion yesterday about another person that could take the fall, and it was Cutler.
Yeah. But you know what, Chip? I think we had talked one day, and I thought you had said that the way his contract worked out, that it.
I did.
But you did some checking.
Yeah,
I think
did.
you had said $6 million was the salary cap hit, but then you did some checking, and it was different.
I did some checking that if they trade him, and there were several choices, and I picked trade. What they need to do in order to minimize, the hit, if they trade him after next season or after this season, they'll take a $4 million cap hit for him, and $12.5 million will be cap savings. And essentially, that $4 million cap hit would be what would be left of the prorated bonus.
Say that again. What you just said about this the $16 million for next year?
Okay,
how does it work out?
He's due $16.5 million next year.
Okay.
If they trade him, they will take a $4 million what they call dead money cap hit.
Okay.
Which is essentially some what would be bonuses that would be due him for 15, 16, 17, and 18.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And they could save $12.5 million.
Okay.
But they have to trade him to be able to do that.
See, I'm gonna go back on what we were talking about yesterday because I thought that he would be a guy that they'd want to jettison, but I'm coming back to the idea that who are they actually going to replace him with? We talked about Clausen.
Yeah.
And
He doesn't have the experience.
yeah, I mean, the other thing is I did a little more research on Clausen, believe it or not, and his Notre Dame career was not what I thought that it was. They actually had a sub 500 record in his 3 years as a starter. I think he threw 60 touchdown passes and had let's say between 15 and 20 interceptions. So his actual passing was fine, but I think they were like 16 and 21 or something.
So
like
he
that
was
with
he
him
was
as a
the
starter.
He was the last 3 years at Charlie Weiss.
He probably was, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, you know what, I'm not sure if that helped him, really, to be honest.
That
I'm not
may
a big
not-
Charlie
may-
Weiss
That may
guy.
that may not have been that may have been the issue. Just
Yeah.
the fact that it was Charlie Weiss.
But I think that, let's put it this way, though. Public perception becomes such a big thing for these sports teams are so high profile at this point in time. Public perception is a big thing. I doubt if they could get away, even if Clausen was the better choice, what they were actually seeing in practices and whatnot. If they deemed him to be the better choice, I'm still not sure that they could get away with jettisoning Cutler and promoting Clausen without a whole lot of flack. So it all comes back to who do you really replace him with?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And there's nobody waiting.
no, I mean, there's nobody. And the
There's-
other thing is, when I was having coffee with the guys on Sunday, and Dan Burt was saying, I didn't realize, and I said this to you yesterday, I didn't realize that Cutler was the highest paid player in the league.
Yeah, this
which
year he
was
is.
Really,
Yeah.
I got to say, I'll defend Emory and GMs and coaches because it's not an easy job. But I got to say, that was a ridiculous move, and I think it's not smart. But I did say to Dan, well, Cutler is probably better than half the quarterbacks in the league. And I happened to see an article in the paper the other day where I was pretty close to being right. He's ranked, I think, 17th overall among starting quarterbacks, which would put him not in the top half, but would put him just below the top half.
Just below the.
So my statement is close to being right on. And
he's average.
That's what it amounts to.
Yeah.
Jim, this is a type of guy, and you know what? He could go someplace else. Let me put it to you this way. There's still hope for Jay Cutler. I don't know about in Chicago, but he could go someplace else, and just it would be the right situation, and he could catch fire and be good. He's got the talent. There's no question. But the problem with a guy like Jay Cutler and other guys you could probably name if you knew the inside workings of teams is he's got the talent, and the decision makers become enamored with the talent, but the talent never translates on a consistent basis to the game, and he's the type of guy who gets you fired.
Yeah, yeah.
And that
I mean,
you don't want that guy. So
he's go back. He got Shanahan fired.
Well, I don't think he got Shanahan
No,
fired.
well,
Shanahan moved on because
Shanahan
there were
moved
some
on.
Problems with Bowlen.
Shanahan moved on.
But I'm beginning to think the guy who got a lot of static in that situation was the young guy, McDaniel, who came over from the Patriots to be the head coach.
And he wasn't ready to be a head coach.
But I'm thinking he's a guy who probably is interested in mechanics of the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I'm not I'm not buying into all of this crap. Excuse my language.
Johnny said it.
I'm not buying into all of this.
Get the jar out. He's got to pay.
I'm not buying into all of this stuff of the mechanics. But one thing I am going to say, you're not going to be able to survive as a quarterback in this league or any other throwing off your back foot as much as Cutler does.
No.
And maybe that was the issue. Maybe that became the issue between Cutler and McDaniel. So as bad as McDaniel's tenure was in Denver, maybe he was right on the money about Cutler, and all he was doing was trying to improve or keep Cutler from from a habit that's really bad. I would say, I don't know all the things they talk about with the the arm motion and everything. I think is a lot of BS. But you know what? I would say I put a lot of credence in a guy throwing off of his back foot. You cannot be. That's not the way you throw a baseball, a football, a basketball, or anything else.
It just dawned on me too here when you said talking about mechanics. I mean, we brought up a name yesterday when we were talking about guys from the past who wouldn't be a good fit in this league nowadays, in the way they try to watch everybody and watch everything. Bobby Lane didn't really have the best mechanics from what I remember.
No.
I seem to remember a lot of sidearm coming out of Bobby Lane.
I'm sure Bobby Lane was a proponent of, get the ball to the guy, whatever works.
That's right.
Is what you do.
I'm not drunk. I'm from Texas.
You look at a guy, You look at a guy like Peyton Manning even today. Maybe his mechanics are fine, but his arm strength's no longer there. But he still has the intuitive feel for getting the ball to an open receiver. Are we ready to break, John?
John says we broke the station. He has to put it back together.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
You are listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, December the 10th, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now back to Jim and Rich.
All right, thank you, John.
Jim,
we broke the station. We put it back together. We're still here.
You know what I think? What you have with professional sports in a lot of instances, and like the quarterback position in football for sure. In a lot of cases, I think you end up with players who get paralysis by analysis. Oh. Yeah. And they're so. I mean, you know what? How can you be? I don't know. It's. There's a new book in the library called The QBs, which I'm going to read, and I'm sure it'll shed some light on what's going on with modern day quarterbacks, because it's all about the modern QBs, and they have the. Now they have these not guys who are hired by the teams, but independent guys who are quarterback gurus who work with quarterbacks and have all these unique training things, and I'm sure those guys will be mentioned in this book. But
I'll be interested to see if Trestman is mentioned in there.
Yeah, it's possible. Mm-hmm. Do you remember? You remember the Patriots had a guy back in I want to say this was the 70s named Russ Francis.
Yeah,
and,
tight end.
Tight end. He was from Oregon State, and he was a world-class javelin thrower, good enough to be in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And he had a track coach that said, you know what, this guy, if he could improve his throw, say, I'll just throw it a number 10 feet, he could medal in the Olympics. So they started to work with his form. To make a long story short, they totally screwed him up. Now he's throwing the thing 20 or 30 feet less than what he was throwing it, and he never did get it back.
Yeah.
And every time I hear, say, I know Jaws, Ron Jaworski is huge on this, talking about, he's analyzing this quarterback, the way he throws the ball, and it's got to come from here, and the angle of the arm, and I'm thinking, this, you know what? Now, some guys maybe need that. There's other guys who just, they've been doing it forever, they have a good feel for it. Don't mess with them. If it's working, don't mess with them.
And I laugh when you mention Jaworski. He was like a journeyman, from what I remember.
I would say he was, how
average?
We talk about the Hall of the Very
Good.
He would be in that hall.
He would be in the Hall of the Very Good.
Yeah, he was with the Eagles, I think, and the Rams. I think he was probably a better than average quarterback, but it's not like you're talking Johnny Unitas talking or something.
No. But by the way, just kind of finishing off our discussion on Cutler with the cap. If they keep him for 15 and he's here the whole year, the cap number is $16.5 million. 16, it's $17 million. 17, $16 million. 18, $17 million. 19, $20 million. And 20, 2020, the cap hit would be $21.7 million. That's if he's here.
Then I don't see how they could do anything but trade him.
No. I mean, essentially when you looked at it, everybody went, "Oh my God, a 7-year contract, $126.7 million." Well, you know what? 54 of it was guaranteed.
I don't know, Jim. Should we talk about something else? I was really jazzed when you told me that the Cubs were looking to get Miguel Montero.
Miguel Montero. The Sox helped themselves overnight.
Yeah, that was. I guess,
I give them credit for that. That's going to, they gave up Marcus Semien and somebody else, and I had the name and I forgot to write it down. But they gave up Marcus Semien and another player for Jeff Samardzija. They signed David Roberts, and that really, that bullpen has been strengthened.
Oh man, I mean, the Sox could very well be a contender.
Very, very much so. The other, with the other signing, the first baseman,
Adam LaRoche.
LaRoche,
and they also got Zach Duke.
Yeah, I mean, they've really done a job.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say, I always liked the way Kenny Williams operated as the GM. I mean, he made his mistakes, but then, you know what? He would correct them as quickly as he possibly could. Mm-hmm. He was never cowed by the fact that he made a mistake. He stayed aggressive, which I think is good. And I think Rick Hahn is emulating him.
Yeah. Now, the issue is, it's kind of interesting, too, that, the story was out over the weekend that Kenny
might go to Toronto.
And apparently Jerry Reinsdorf said, no, you may not talk to him.
Although Kenny Williams is saying in the paper that the papers are describing it as he has an interest in the job, and he actually reiterated the statement he actually made, which was a pretty neutral statement, basically saying, if anybody was interested in him, he would always, and I'm paraphrasing, always be willing to listen, which doesn't exactly say that I want to get out of here and go to another club.
No. I mean, the issue, too, I think he's said in the past he'd like to be part of an ownership group. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of wondering in this, and I heard some other discussion over the weekend, Jerry Reinsdorf is 79.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if he'd like him to be, I'm sure there is a sell agreement in place when Jerry either decides to step down or passes on, because I don't think there's anybody in the family who's going to take over. Mm-hmm. I kind of wondering if they're saying, why don't you stick around? I'm not going to be around forever. You can be a part of the group that takes over.
You know what, Jim? The other thing about this whole deal that does, people are expressing some surprise that Reinsdorf, if this is all true, that he's not given the okay for them to talk to Kenny Williams. But if you know a little bit about Jerry Reinsdorf or have read about him, he's not. He's a guy that believes that he wants to get the best out of every deal he makes. He's not a guy. He's not an equal He's not like. Put it this way: if he can get the better of a deal, I'm not saying he's not going to trade fairly. I'm talking about trades or a type of thing like this, but he's going to look out for his own best interests.
Sure.
Whether it's financially, personnel-wise,
or whatever.
And if he doesn't think that it's to his advantage to let Kenny Williams go to Toronto, then he's not going to allow. He's not going to allow it.
Yeah, and I perfectly understand. I understand that perfectly.
Sure.
You have the talent. You want to keep the talent.
Yeah,
within.
Definitely.
You've had success with him in his position.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So that's
the deal is the deal was Samardzija in exchange for Marcus Semien, right-hander Chris Bassett, and likely one more player to be determined.
Okay.
Samardzija last year between the Cubs and the A's. 7-13 with a 2.99 ERA, very impressive WHIP, 1.07, and he struck out 202 and 219 in 2/3 innings. So he would be, he would likely fit in behind Chris Sale.
You know what I really like about this trade, and I'm not downing the guy that I'm going to mention, but Rick Hahn, the deal that he just made there, that you just. You mentioned all the players. The part I like is the Marcus Semien part. Not because I dislike Marcus Semien at all. I mean, we didn't see him enough to really know.
64
But
games last year.
It makes me think of what the Dodgers used to do. They would get a guy. You know, I'm thinking of guys like Billy Sudeikis, Billy Grabarkowitz, other guys that I can't. You know, there's numerous guys I couldn't even make. Ted Sizemore, who were major leaguers, but weren't their top prospects.
No.
But they made other people feel that they were.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Semien has just enough talent to make the A's feel this guy could be good. I'm not sure that he's going to be good, but it's a great trade to trade your guys. Okay, he's going to be a major leaguer, but he's not going to be a top guy, I don't think. And I love that when a GM can, okay, we're going to trade this prospect, and we're going to get actually a guy who we know is a major leaguer.
And the other thing, too, from the Sox standpoint, they were able to get Samardzija without having to give up really their prized shortstop prospect, Tim Anderson.
Yeah.
Now, the only disadvantage here is Samardzija's got 1 year left on his contract, and the agent said he wants him to hit the open market next year, which I think is fine, but at least up until then, the Sox can talk.
Oh, you know what? The Sox didn't give up anything that they couldn't afford to give up.
No.
So and it's worth it to have Samardzija for a year if he strengthens the staff.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, based on the moves they made, they could easily be a contender for the Central.
Yeah. Now, Bassett last year was 1-1 with a 3.94 ERA in 6 games, 5 starts.
Okay.
So
with the Sox?
With the Sox.
I didn't even really realize he had gone up with the Sox. Okay.
Yeah. So I think great deal.
Yeah, I think it's a real good
deal
for the Sox.
Jason Hammel's back on the north side.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's a good signing. The big issue is
the heck with Jason Hammel. I'm breathlessly awaiting Miguel Montero.
I'm sure.
Does he hit? Because you know what, Jim? If I ever go to a game, I'm definitely going to want to see him go deep in the count, and I'm going to be enamored of the way he frames the pitches.
Have you checked? We have to check his BABIP.
Get his BABIP for me, will you? Now, what was the actual thing where he actually gets safe hits versus times at bat? What was his batting average last year? Did you hear it?
In 235, 240.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Jeez, didn't Wellington Castillo hit better than that?
Yes, but they're questioning his defense and his.
He doesn't frame very well.
He's not
a good framer.
He's not a framer.
No, he's not a framer.
He's not a framer.
Was Johnny Bench a good framer? I think he was a good framer.
I think he framed well.
Yeah, he framed okay.
I think Yogi Berra was a framer.
I don't know about Mike Piazza, even though he hit like 300 and some home runs, but he was not. See, the Cubs might have traded him because despite the fact that he was hitting 30 home runs and knocking in 100, he didn't frame very well.
Yeah. How about Carlton Fisk? How was he? Was he a framer?
I'll tell you, he was more like a statue. He was like, I thought he was posing for holy pictures or something most of the time.
Well, he had to go out and chat. He liked to talk a lot.
He did. You know what? Now, there's a guy that, you know what, if you want to say a typical, what we would generalize as a typical New Englander, Carlton Fisk would be it.
Yeah.
I can see him smoking his pipe, and he'd probably, even if he agreed with you, he'd probably argue the other side of whatever point you wanted to make.
I think so. I'm just kind of checking and seeing if we have any not Jason Hammel, John Lester news, but nothing.
No, you know what? I really think, despite the fact that there's a connection there with Epstein and Hoyer and Lester, I don't think we're gonna get him.
I'm a little doubtful of it.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a good feeling here.
No, I'm not at all. You know what? I always am really amused when the papers will say, "Oh, the Dodgers are just jumping in to roil the waters." What are you talking about? You're offering the guy hundreds of millions of dollars, or over $100 million. You're just doing that for a lark. You're doing that to you don't like
the water.
You don't like the way Theo Epstein parts his hair, so you're doing that to tick him off a little bit. I don't get that.
It gets ridiculous.
It does.
It really does. One other thing here, baseball-wise, and we'll talk about a couple other things in the time we have left. Mm-hmm. The Veterans Committee couldn't elect anybody to the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Who was
Well,
possible veterans?
Well, the
Did you tell
list
me that?
here, yeah, I talked about that. They needed 12 votes. This,
Well, Billy Pierce was on there, right?
yeah, they needed 12 votes. Dick Allen and Tony Oliva got 11.
Yeah, now, you know what? Those guys, to me, are not even... you could say Dick Allen was iffy based on the fact that he's, personality-wise, sometimes was a bit of a pain to handle. But his body of work, as far as his hitting, and, he played two positions defensively, third and first. How is he not a reasonable Hall of Fame guy? I mean, there's a guy, I would say, if you took the top 10 hardest hitting players I've ever seen, he's in it.
Oh, absolutely.
And Tony Oliva?
Tony Oliva. I remember seeing Oliva the first year of the DH. I mean, the DH prolonged his career.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to a Sox game when the Twins were in town, and he was DHing. Honest to God, it was painful to watch him run to first base.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his knees were so shot, but it prolonged his career.
Yeah.
Next one, Jim Cott, 10 votes.
Wow, man, there's another good candidate. Because, Billy Pierce, did Billy Pierce, you say, got 12
No, what?
votes?
No.
Oh, okay.
Billy Pierce.
Okay.
Billy Pierce was down in a group with Ken Boyer, Gil Hodges, Bob Howsam, who was the GM of the Cardinals back in the
And the Reds.
and the Reds
The
too.
Reds, Big Red Machine.
the Big
I
Red
think.
Machine. Billy Pierce and Luis Tiant got three votes or fewer.
Oh, this, you know what? This is ridiculous. Who is on that committee?
Oh,
I mean, they're
you
idiots.
have. I should have pulled the whole thing, the whole list, but names that I can remember. First of all, one that I thought was a complete idiot, and I thought he was responsible for keeping Santo out for all those years, was Joe Morgan. You got Jim Bunning, some others.
Well, Joe Morgan should. I mean, he faced Luis Tiant in I'm pretty sure in the World Series more than once, maybe.
Yeah.
And I mean, the other thing I hate is guys like Dick Allen, Louis Tiant, just based on the color that they brought to the game. I'm talking about colorful personalities, guys that even now Louis Tiant was a solid citizen. Dick Allen again had his moments, but they brought interest to the game.
Dick would have preferred. Dick preferred to go to the track.
He liked going to the track, but I'd like to see Hall of Famer Joe. And I'm not saying Joe Morgan doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame, and he was excellent, probably almost a prototype for his position. But I'd like to see Joe Morgan's numbers versus Dick Allen's numbers and see how those things add up. Yeah. I'm really ticked off that those guys, I'm not saying even if they didn't get in this year, that they didn't get more support than what they got. Come on, give me a break.
Here, a couple others along the way.
Give me a break.
A couple others along the way. Minnie Minoso got 8 votes.
Minnie Minoso should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
he's a how would you say it? He's a pioneer.
He was a pioneer. He was a pioneer for the Latin ball players.
Well, let me put it this way: Jackie Robinson's in the Hall of Fame, and his career was not as long as it could have been because, obviously, being black, he came into the game when he was already
he was in his late 20s.
Minnie Minoso is in the same category. So this is all. You know what? I wish you wouldn't even read the list because it's making me sick.
I'll give you one more.
Okay.
Maury Wills.
Oh my God, Maury Wills. I mean, all he did was break Ty Cobb's single season record,
Right.
and there's a guy who
9 votes.
9 votes. I mean, there's a guy who was not even thought to be a major league player, and through hard work, and Maury Wills again. He had his problems later on in his career. He dabbled in drugs. He had problems with, but there's a guy who worked his rear end off to become a major leaguer and became a good one. And this is ridiculous,
Isn't that? I looked at that. And I just
let's go to a different subject.
I shook
Jim.
my head, and there's going to
making me sick.
and there's going to be another 3 years before this group comes up for
Oh, my
consideration
goodness.
again.
I'll tell you, I would have no problem with them putting any one of the guys you just mentioned in the Hall. I think they're all deserving in their own ways, and I think probably you could make big cases for them being more deserving than guys who are in the Hall currently.
Right. I think so too.
This is really okay. Let's go to a different subject because I'm
What do you want
ticked off now.
What do you want to talk about?
Do
Do we want to get into one of our bulk topics that we keep saying we got to get into and we never get into, the most frustrating players in Chicago sports?
Well, I was going to say he's not the most frustrating player, but I mentioned to you right at the end of our conversation yesterday when Paul Gasol was on the West Coast. I thought he was just, he was Tonto to Kobe Bryant's Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
But now getting a feel for what type of player is, and Paul Gasol is 34 now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, that guy. My apologies. Not that he cares what I think, but just realize this guy is a really, really excellent player. And I have a question for you. Based on their entire body of work, who is the star player on the Bulls? Paul Gasol or Derrick Rose?
I'd go Gasol.
Yeah,
right
I would say
Gasol. And you asked me one day whose team this is, and I said, right now at that point, I would look at it and I was going to say it was Jimmy Butler, but Gasol.
Yeah,
I'd say both of them. It was interesting too. Yesterday, I'm listening and I'm listening to the radio, and there was a caller, and he talked about listening to the Boers and Birdstein, and there was a caller who talked about who just raved at a move Gasol made in this particular game, the way he did this. Mm-hmm. And he said, to me, I think he is the best big man, post player, whatever you want to call him, that the Bulls have ever had.
It's possible.
And then they finished the call, and they both kind of said, And Terry Boers used to be the Bulls beat writer.
Okay.
So he started rattling off names and started thinking about it. He said, Borowinkle. Mm-hmm. Big Daddy was, to me, one of the best high post guys I ever saw.
Excellent passer.
Excellent passer.
Rebounder.
Yeah.
And he actually wasn't that bad a scorer either.
But he just never did very much. And
He
I think
didn't.
that was the rap that a lot of people
Right.
viewed on him. You had Nate Thurman here for a while, but he was kind of near the end of the career.
Yeah, he didn't pan out really that well.
You know, you had Clifford Ray for a while.
Yeah.
He had a
good,
better career when he
defensive,
left.
player.
A great defensive player.
Yeah.
You know,
Artis Gilmore.
Artis Gilmore,
Yeah. Bill Cartwright.
Yeah. You know, you had all these people. You had all these players here who were good in their own right.
Definitely.
And, you know, everybody, you know, they're both sitting there going, and Terry all of a sudden said, yeah, you know what? He could be.
Well, all I can say is, Jim, I really have to say I had no real knowledge of how good the man was, and now seeing him a little bit, I could see why he was, why they needed him to be there to help Kobe and the rest of the guys, win the championships that they did. Because he was, it's not like Kobe was 1 and he was 1A. I think they were both. It's like when it's Kobe and Shaq, Michael and Scotty, whatever other combos you want to name. To me, he was the equal. I mean, he's a different type of player, but he's the equal of Kobe in the sense of the status that they would have on the same team. Mm-hmm. So he's an excellent player. But you know what? I know I shouldn't. Do you want to get into that subject a little? We don't have much time.
I know we don't have much time, but there was one point I wanted to bring up, and it just kind of popped into my head. And I didn't hear the quote or hear the clip, so I don't know. But I thought it was. If what they say is true, it was kind of an unprofessional thing for him to do. Illinois made is going to a bowl game, the Heart of Dallas Bowl or whatever.
Heart of Artichokes Bowl.
Artichoke
Hearts Bowl
or something like that. But they go down there with their 6-6 record, mm-hmm. and Tim Beckman, instead of being professional about it, was gloating to the press like, "Ha ha ha! I got to a bowl game. what do you think of that? You guys were writing me off. I've led them to a bowl game, and you're kind of thinking, well, would Nick Saban be like this?
Yeah. Well, you know what though? I have to say, I wouldn't do it myself if I was Beckman. I would have a little more, what would you say, tact about the whole thing.
Yeah, and
but I could understand his feelings because, again, we talked about this, Jim, and we said we don't know really what kind. I haven't watched an Illinois game since Beckman's been coach.
I haven't either.
The one thing that I do get a sense of is toward the end of the season, it seemed like their defense, and I don't know if their defense is young, old, or whatever, but they tightened up and they seemed to be giving up less points. I mean, and these were Big Ten opponents, so that seemed to have improved. I guess my point is the man took a lot of heat, and I don't even know if it was the cupboard bare when he got here or what. You know, I remember his first year. I think they said they had 6 or 7 NFL-bound players, but most of them, my sense of it were sort of guys who were out for themselves. So that defense never really did very well, even with the talent they had. So I'm thinking this guy might have had to work through a lot of things, try to get things where he needed them to be to start to get the program maybe to go in the direction he wanted it to be. And nobody cut him any slack right from day one. I mean, he was almost criticized from day one because he came from, where was he at before he was here? The MAC, right?
He was at the MAC.
And this guy never got one day's worth of slack from the media that I could think of.
He never got slack from the media. And I mean, the other thing, too, I think he really got off to a bad start because about the time he came in was when all hell was breaking loose at Penn State.
Yeah.
And they took off they took off essentially trying to steal players.
Yeah, I'll say this now. In fairness to the media, he screwed up.
Yeah,
you're right. He did.
Yeah.
That was no class there, in my opinion.
And I think that kind of tainted the image right from that point.
But I think, yeah, it did. You're right. But again, that he didn't have any success with that, which was fine. I think when everything turns out the way that it should be, I think okay, we can put that behind us. I know that you like to talk about Wint, and he has a tendency to, I guess, have some malapropisms
Yes.
that he throws in, but
he's not glib.
But I think that that doesn't mean some of the things that we just mentioned doesn't mean necessarily that he's a poor coach or can't be successful. And I think that he's suffered a lot from the press. The press has nothing really ever good to say about him, and so maybe that's why he had to take his moment to gloat. I don't agree with it, but
no. I thought it was kind of a classless thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It just once again, we're not getting into everything we never want to get into. What's your thought about the Final Four? I'm especially thinking Alabama, Ohio State, especially after Ohio State just beat the poop out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I guess they had their cap set for that game,
Wow.
as you would say. I just, I'm not a fan of the whole football playoff system. I wish they would just go back to the old bowl alliances. I think this whole thing is a fiasco. What it always comes, whether it was the days of the coaches and the writers having their separate polls, or this committee that they have that's making the decisions based on whatever their criteria is. I think it's a no-win situation, regardless of who makes the choices. And I think it's stupid because I'll go back to this. I think what we had talked. I think we either talked about it on the show or between ourselves. Why not say take 8 conferences, whatever, and have a playoff. Your top teams in each conference, and play it down to a winner and say that's your champion.
I mean, somebody suggested you have what they refer to as the Power Five.
Power conferences.
The Power Five.
The Power Five.
Each of them get a slot, and then 3 at-large teams.
You could do that. That would make more sense. If you're going to have this, that would make more sense. I don't even want to see them have it, because when I look and see that who's going to play in the Rose Bowl? Is that going to end up being the other? It's not going to be Ohio State and Alabama.
No, Ohio State and Alabama are the Sugar Bowl, and I forgot the Rose Bowl. Florida State
and whoever the other team
whoever
is.
The fourth.
Mississippi State or Mississippi or something. It's one of those.
I forgot now. All of a sudden, I just went blank on it.
Well, you're
I'm looking. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Jim? You're always going to get. Now I see that. Who are the two teams that were sort of?
Okay, the other one is Oregon and Florida State. I'm sorry, and that'll be
Oregon and Florida State. Right.
That'll be the Rose Bowl.
Now the interesting thing I find in this whole deal is that all year Mississippi and Mississippi State have been up there, and now they're not even in the running. So maybe two worthy contenders are totally out of the picture because of losses in the last 3-4 weeks or whatever. Doesn't mean they're not worthy teams. The other interesting thing, I heard a couple of bozos talking on the radio Sunday morning, and they were saying, well, Florida State maybe shouldn't be in there. Now, Florida State, even though they've had a lot of close games, I saw them play Georgia Tech last Saturday, and Georgia Tech was no slouch. They gave them a good game. But here's an undefeated team that people are actually saying maybe they shouldn't be in it. I don't care if they won every game by 1 point. They're undefeated.
Yeah.
And you know what? If they're really underachieving to that point, then Oregon is going to kick their butt on whatever day they play, and we won't have to worry about it anymore. But an undefeated major college team, Florida State should be in it.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at Alabama and Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Even though Ohio State had their big game, come on, Nick Saban's going to have a month to prepare for this game.
Yeah.
Two other things quick. I was looking Twitter. They expect the John Lester to make a decision sometime today, so that should be announced. Nothing yet. Kenny Williams on Jerry Reinsdorf willingness to be so aggressive this winter. When he starts to smell it, he steps up.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, there's another thing. There's some kind of impression that Jerry Reinsdorf is cheap. You know what? I've never seen that.
I think when he sees, if he understands that it isn't going to work this year, okay, well, we'll regroup and we'll figure out what we're going to do next year.
Yeah.
I think the only poor decision I think Jerry Reinsdorf ever made was that year with the white flag trade when they were really essentially still in it.
Yeah. Although I actually
they could have conceivably won.
Yeah. Although I have to say, I think I could understand his frustration that year, and he said, "That's it. I'm not watching this anymore."
Yeah, so I think I would agree with. I would agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nothing else on John Lester. Let's wrap it up. But I got one item here, and I had to laugh. This was from, I saw this clip on Deadspin yesterday, and it was from a newspaper clipping from the January 2nd, 1941 issue of the Bend Bulletin in the New Orleans area.
Okay.
These two guys were born over 70 years too late to be a part of social media, because these two guys would have been a hit on social media. This is a newspaper article dated January 2nd, 1941 from New Orleans, Louisiana. Patrolman F.J. Aragon reported today that he was watching the Tennessee-Boston college football game in the Sugar Bowl when two men, obviously victims of too much New Year's cheer, asked him to help them find their seats. Aragon said he looked at their tickets and discovered they were for the Rose Bowl game between Stanford and Nebraska in Pasadena, California. I told you we were on the wrong train, one of them said to the other. The patrolman let them watch the Sugar Bowl.
God bless him.
God bless him. I'm glad there were meatballs back in 1941.
Oh, man.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for us.
That's a great story.
I thought that was a great one. I love that. Hey, we had a good time again today.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for everything, John. Thanks for Kevin. thanks for you guys to listen to our little
Definitely.
nonsense. And we will see you next time. We're out of here.
Bye-bye. That's a great story.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, December the 10th on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with the WRHS sports announcers Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. Our audio engineer is James Rohde. Radio station manager is Kevin Zeffinek. And the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, December the 9th, the year 2014. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.